Like that guy again. Then he moved away that. He was kind of like, COVID and everything. No, bro, that was in middle school.
Hi there.
Like, it was literally 2014, bro.
Literally passed out while she was doing the performance, and nobody reacted for a second because they all thought maybe it was part of the performance. Because I think it was.
That's smacks right now.
So they were like, "Oh wait."
Severe. No, I haven't.
Yeah, same.
Once I've seen them.
Like I've seen people have like no sleep between rounds, but
No, that is me. Trust me. I was like,
despite his. What's it called?
Everybody has
See, Andrew's girls are in party. Next week, I'm gonna make sure that I'm watch videos of Actually, I don't show up. I show up in the swap instead. And we just go on my YouTube channel. The only problem is I said like
I can excuse the leaving, you do it quietly, it'll come back.
because I only live I made it to where yes,
My most professional life right now.
Oh my god, I miss you so much.
But yeah, it's crazy. It'll be okay. I'll be chilling.
yeah, we're good.
Sorry.
High school regional it's just like you got something.
Are you?
So there were different levels of that.
Are you gonna do a track here? Yeah, because it's a 1-year track for you to get the BS.
Okay. So how many seats are you?
Okay, thank you all so very much for coming to our second technical night of these showcases. Last night got canceled due to the inclement weather, but thank you all so very much for coming. And thank you to our live stream, which is thankfully also working. I figured it out somehow. So we have a few people on there right now. And so this is the Alabama Forensic Council. For those of you that are unfamiliar with what that is, it's our competitive speech and debate team here on campus. And we've just come back from Orlando, Florida, where we have some national champions that are going to be sharing some of their speeches with us. And we're gearing up for our next national tournament, which is in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we're leaving next Thursday. So you all being here is wonderful support for us as we are returning to in-person competition. We've been virtual by and large for the past 2 years due to some unknown reason. But to get things started, our first speaker is presenting extemporaneous speech. So Isaac Sherman has been across the hallway here, and he's been provided by a prompt that he spent the last half an hour putting together. So he's going to come in and present 7 minutes of something that he had no clue that he was going to do half an hour ago. So give me a few minutes. Hopefully not a few minutes. A few seconds here. We'll bring him in and get him started. Hi there, come on in. Hello. All righty, it's 30 minutes finally elapsed. And next up, we will have Isaac Sherman. I'll provide signals.
Fantastic. And how are they provided? Standard. Yeah, sorry, I should make sure this is.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2016, Donald Trump ended the relationship between Iran and the United States by terminating the JCPOA. But this toxic relationship that had existed between the United States and Iran was actually providing stability to Iranian constituents. As the January 11, 2022 CNN explains, the deal between Iran and the United States was able to offer stability to Iranians that had formerly not existed. Since 1953, the United States and Iran have been fundamentally at odds, and the deal signaled a turning point in the relations that allowed them to interact with each other. In 2003, Iran threatened to nuclearize, and so in 2015, the JCPOA was implemented as an effort to prevent Iran from nuclearizing and prevent the United States from implementing harsh economic sanctions. Interestingly, in 2016, when Donald Trump pulled out, these relationships were crippled, but the Biden administration is trying to re-implement them. So considering, Politico on March 14th of 2022 explains that 70 Democrats and 70 Republicans, bipartisan support, sent a letter to Biden urging him not to pursue the new JCPOA. We have to ask today's question: will Biden's Iran nuclear deal be a success? To which the answer is a resounding yes, because geopolitics have changed in three ways. First, by recognizing how tensions need de-escalation. Second, by realizing how any deal is better than none. And finally, by realizing how Iran and the United States now have a common enemy. Look, when abusive relationships end, they often turn incredibly violent. Most women, unfortunately, know this. The March 12th DW explains that Iran and the United States relationship was no different. This year, Iran launched a dozen missiles on U.S. embassies in Iraq, specifically because of the U.S.'s inability to work with them. Their reluctance to enter into a new JCPOA hindered their ability to build a working relationship. But what's interesting is the reason why Iran launched these missiles wasn't necessarily related to the US's unwillingness to enter into a new agreement. It was because of the stalling of negotiations, because Russia prevented negotiations from continuing. As they invaded Ukraine, they decided to use negotiations with Iran as a political leverage point against the United States. Al Monitor on March 13th explains that Iranian generals eventually recognized that the stalled negotiations were the reason for the attacks, and that in the broader context, Iranian relationships with the United States and Iraq have been getting better. Since 2020, attacks in Iraq by Iranian forces on US embassies have decreased by 80%. The first reason why the implementation of a new JCPOA is going to help Biden's renegotiation is because tensions need de-escalation. But it's also really crucial that we realize that while toxic relationships are problematic, they're a lot of fun. Any JCPOA deal is better than no deal, which is the second reason why this deal has to work. The February 2nd, 2022 Congressional Research Service explains that since the US's pull out of the 2015 JCPOA, we've implemented 100 pages worth of sanctions on the Iranian government. These include sanctions on energy, power, oil, military, and general trade sanctions. And this cripples the Iranian economy. Look, it's really interesting to contextualize geopolitical disputes through white leaders that like to argue on TV. But for Iranian constituents, the sanctions are literally killing their businesses. As the March 22nd, 2022 CNB explains, 13% of the Iranian population is currently out of the labor force, not because they're unwilling to work, but because there's no jobs available. But let's compare this to what happened in 2015 when we saw economic growth. Back when the JCPOA was implemented, the poverty rate in Iran was less than 13%. Compare that to today, where the poverty rate in Iran is 40%. Economies in Iran are functionally being crippled by sanctions placed on them by the United States. And while the geopolitical and humanitarian crises exacerbated by the Iranian government is terrible, the US is only exacerbating it by not entering into new trade negotiations. The second reason why Biden's implementation of a new deal has to work is because any deal is better than none. Look, relationships work specifically because most relationships have common enemies. For married couples, it's their kids. The third reason why the Iran nuclear deal has to be a success is because Iran and the United States now have a common enemy. The February 20th, 2022 TechCrunch explains that US sanctions on Iran didn't hurt it as bad in 2016 and 2017 because they could turn to third parties to get support. They moved on to bigger and better things. But as these economies begin to fail, as we place sanctions on the Russian and Chinese government for supporting the invasion in Ukraine, they're not the backbone that Iran can use against the United States. So now the Iranian economy is seeing an exacerbation of poverty, and because they're being used as a political pawn against the United States by Russia, they see the US as a better ally than their Russian counterparts. The March 9th, 2022 Haaretz explains how Iranian generals have already recognized this, realizing how Iran is literally being used as a political leverage point against the West. Look, Iranian generals don't want to be seen as invasive forces that commit humanitarian rights. But most importantly, they don't want to be seen as tools used by erratic Russian leaders and agents of an invasion of a democratic state. Look, Iranian leaders want to see change in a better way, and they realize that Russia and China aren't the best ways to protect their sovereignty. So the third reason why the new JCPOA has to be a success is because Iran and the United States now have a common enemy. So in returning to today's question, will Biden's Iran nuclear deal be a success? We understood that the answer was absolutely, because geopolitics have changed in three ways. Because tensions need de-escalation, because any deal is better than none, and Iran now has a common enemy. So abusive relationships don't have to go on forever, and Iran's and the US's may start back up.
Well, thank you, Isaac, for that discussion of geopolitics and international affairs. cares? Yeah, go for it. And so that was an example of extemporaneous speaking, which is one of our genres, of our 3 genres within speech, of limited preparation. So again, he had half an hour to prepare that. I don't think he did too bad. So now we're going to shift gears to interpretation of literature. So this has been worked on for much longer than 30 minutes. And so we're going to be focusing on prose interpretation, in which Samantha Rodden is going to be sharing their work. They have taken a larger work and edited it down to 10 minutes, hopefully embodying the entirety of the performance and sharing their own message with us as well. So please join me in welcoming Samantha Rodden.
So aside from becoming a werewolf, June was pretty non-eventful. And everything was so much simpler when I shifted. I didn't have to think about Taylor Nelson. Being a wolf was wild, more instinct-driven. But I was still mostly me on the inside. And I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like maybe the wolf who turned me would come back and fight me for the territory, or maybe my neighbor would catch me lurking in his backyard at midnight and try to shoot me. But nothing ever happened. So I just kept running. And the running felt amazing. Queer women are forced to reject their true forms due to the prevalence of compulsory heterosexuality. Popularized by feminist theorist Adrienne Rich, compulsory heterosexuality is women believing heterosexuality isn't a choice. Rather, it's innate, and thus seeing any other option in sexuality as deviant and impossible. Author Caroline Diorio uses a lycanthrope character who shifts into a werewolf at night as a metaphor for the suppression that queer individuals place on their identity through compulsory heterosexuality, ultimately leaving us to ponder if we're ever able to be accepted in our true forms. And It Goes Running by Caroline Diorio. Irish Hills was the only part in my part of Cary that was hiring for the summer. And it advertised itself as this luxury recreational club, but it was really just a dinky pool with a tennis court attached. And I worked in the snack bar, so I was constantly reheating those greasy Red Baron pizzas for customers and always refilling those blue slushies that stained your entire face blue. Gabe was one of those lifeguards that came home from college for the summer. And before Gabe, I'd read during the slow hours of work. One day, Gabe came into the snack bar to ask me for some popcorn, except he didn't have a shirt on, so I didn't really hear what he said. Because I was just staring at how painfully skinny this boy was. God, it was like someone had taken him by his wrists and ankles and just stretched him as far as they could. He had a tattoo on his collarbone, and his face was nice, I guess. Gabe caught me staring and asked me what my name was. And I told him it was Dolores, but he thought I said Duchess. So he called me Duchess. And we talked every day. Gabe would call the phone that connected from my line to his, and he called it dialing the Duchess. He told me about his life in the Appalachians, how it was always just a little bit cold. And he asked me about myself, too. And, I always tried to have something interesting to say. But besides the whole creature of the night thing, there just wasn't much. Still, I talked and he listened, his eyes gleaming. And there was always this smile at the corner of his mouth. Okay, I didn't know if I liked Gabe. But I thought about that smile a lot. I started thinking about Gabe even when I was a wolf. And the crazy thing is, I feel like if I told him, he'd just realize that I'm me and laugh it off. Right? Then it happened on last Thursday in July. That day, the rain started at 9 a.m. and only got heavier as the day went on, so it was just me and Gabe in the snack bar. Until I saw Taylor Nelson come in. And Gabe got up to go meet him. I felt like I was watching it from a million miles away. And I just tried to stay quiet, but I wanted to shift right then and there. I wanted to leap over the snack bar and just snap Taylor's neck off. I wanted to tear him to pieces, except I wouldn't eat him because I didn't want a single part of him rotting inside of me. God. I felt like a monster. I felt ugly and useless because I didn't do anything at all. I just sat there. And the rain kept falling, and I just kept quiet. After he left, I told Gabe. I didn't know if it was the kind of thing that you told a guy, but it just started pouring right out of me. I told him about how the night of Nicole's graduation party, everyone had gone inside, so it was just me and Taylor sitting outside on the swing. And I told him that Taylor had leaned in to kiss me, and I didn't really want to kiss him back, but I didn't really stop him. And I told Gabe that that was my first kiss. And no matter who I end up with or where I go from here, that would always be my first kiss with fucking Taylor Nelson. And I told Gabe, I told him that I was a werewolf. And up until that point, he listened to me like he always had. With that smile. But when I told him that, he just shook his head and walked away. Sometimes I wonder if my mom even loves me. Like, I know she does, but I know it's not the love that you choose. Like, you just don't stop loving your daughter because your daughter's a werewolf. And that night, I barely made it to the backyard before every bone in my body just started crunching and breaking as I shifted. Except this time, it felt different. Because this time it hurt. But I knew I couldn't do anything. So I just kept running.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha. That was emotionally resonant. And so, yes, thank you so much for coming in. And now we're going to shift to yet another genre, and one that is hopefully, we're not going to cry as much for that one. We now have after dinner speaking, which is one of our public address events. So I don't know about you all, I actually haven't had dinner yet, but this one should make you hungry for more. So Rebecca is supposed to be making us laugh throughout this speech by taking a subject that might be more persuasive in nature, more informative in nature, and then presenting it through a comedic lens. So I won't listen to me anymore. Take it away, Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
I am a proud woman in STEM. Each day I go to my classes where I am one of very few women and pretend to know whatever the hell an engineer does. I thought I was here to become the little machine in cars, but apparently that's the engine. But on September 13th, 2021, my routine was interrupted. My professor made me laugh. I was shocked, intrigued even. So to keep the laughs coming, I shouted, "Knock, knock." My professor rushed over to me and clamped my lips shut. "You can't make jokes, Rebecca. Women aren't funny." What? I was devastated and determined to prove him wrong. I Googled, "Women are funny," ready to debunk his sexist ideas. Instead, the first result was a Vanity Fair article from January 2007, which, ew, titled, "Why Women Aren't Funny." Basically, Christopher Hitchens believes that women can't be funny because humor doesn't attract men, so we have no use for it. I was ready to kill this man. But upon further research, I found out his esophagus beat me to it. Unsurprisingly, he is not alone in his beliefs. Telegraph November 12, 2020 explains, "Men for centuries have tried to use science and philosophy to justify their misogynistic belief that women are funny. It may seem ridiculous, but this prevailing notion is damaging women's careers, mental health, and safety. We need to debunk the myth, science, and all the other sexist bullshit that says we aren't funny. So, let's look at why we don't think women are funny, its effects, and how we can appreciate women in comedy. Starting now. Remember that it's still Women's History Month, and I am the first woman. Comedian Kate Berlant shares her advice to aspiring women in comedy, telling The Cut on June 8, 2016, "Men aren't filled with those self-editing feelings. It truly is like a fake it till you make it type thing. Thankfully, women have plenty of experience faking it." Let's look at the history and science behind this. First, historically, men considered women who even attempted comedy to be a literal threat. Well, yeah, because if men aren't the funny ones, they might have to start washing their faces. Sorry, Blake. Founder and CEO of Funny Women, Lynn Parker, explains the Victorian-era comedy was raunchy and sexual in nature. So when women tried to participate, they were seen as no better than prostitutes or freaks. Speaking of freaks, speech people. You make one good point and suddenly the whole room is moaning. Freaks. The world of comedy was built to exclude women as joke tellers and instead make them the punchlines. Of course, Freud eventually joined the party, theorizing that women have penis envy and lack the proper equipment to tell a joke. One time, my roommate made a chicken cross the road joke. She was never seen again. Next. Even science has tried to prove this. The BBC on October 29, 2019 reported a study that said that 63% of men were funnier than the average woman. But this study was total bullshit. It had people look at a cartoon image and write a caption that would then be rated by a panel of judges, creating an unnatural environment and treating comedy differently than what it is. Organic. I get my jokes at Trader Joe's. The study concluded that men must be funnier because men use humor to attract the opposite sex and compete with other men. Heteronormativity and blatant misogyny aside, men view comedy as a way to hold power over their audiences. Female comedian Regina Brooke explains that to make someone laugh means exerting control. So a woman must be conscious of being over-aggressive or it'll make people uncomfortable, thereby creating an environment where no one laughs. I'm so glad y'all are here because virtual ADS was really hard. Jeannie Dugan tells Belmont Theater District, the best part about being a woman in comedy is that you get to amplify women's experiences through comedy. Personally, I just want to amplify me, but I love her spirit. Excluding women leads to worse comedy and a toxic environment. First, this leaves us with shitty comedy. Screen Rant April 8, 2021 explains that women are still almost non-existent in top comedy shows and writing rooms like that of SNL. That many men in one room is bound to be smelly. Like this one. Even if included, women are forced to limit their creativity and perspective in order to adapt. SNL skits still rely on lazy, problematic humor, like last February when the big joke was Pete Davidson kissing John Krasinski. Get it? It's funny because they aren't gay. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't some women in comedy. Some of the biggest names are Amy Schumer and Amy Schumer. At least that's what people think. But there are so many hilarious women, and especially women of color out there, who aren't getting the same opportunities because the spotlighted female comedians are seen as unfunny. So it's no wonder we think all women aren't funny. Next, women in comedy are actually hurting. For example, countless women on my team have received ADS ballots literally telling them they aren't funny. So if I had a judge, I would ask them to delete that last comment. These ballots aren't constructive and it can be bad for our mental health. On top of that, women in comedy are also harassed, threatened, and made to feel unwelcome simply because they're in a toxic, male-dominated field. A lot like UPS. Get it? Male-dominated. UPS. The SWOTO reports that 1 in 3 female comedians have been sexually harassed on stage, and 1 in 4 have been molested by a fellow comic. Women are left stranded. If they do report their harassment and assault, they risk their careers. Regina Baraka explains that to tell a funny story about a terrible thing that happens to you gives you control over it. It becomes your story, as opposed to something that happened to you. But women aren't being given that opportunity. In 2017, Louis C.K. admitted to sexually harassing many of his female colleagues. Now, he's touring around the country and selling out shows. If I wanted to listen to a predator tell jokes for an hour and a half, I'd just go back to high school chemistry. 2 solutions. First, we need to support women in comedy. Financially. Cameron Koso writes for The Medium on June 29, 2019. Watching any female comedians you enjoy will raise your spirits from laughing and help them fight one of the most male-dominated industries. We have more access than ever before to support lesser-known comedians through podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, and the many streaming services. I have the link to a Google Doc that lists some of my favorite female comedians, their performances, and platforms. Come see me after the showcase and you can add any of your favorite creators. But don't even think about adding me, because I already added myself. Finally, we need to make comedy a space for women. Change the whole environment, debunk those stupid science myths, and don't laugh at men. Ever. If you're a man and you're in my ADS round, I'm sorry, but I'm an activist. I have information you can spread about how to combat harassment in the field, and a how-to guide to shoot down misogynistic jokes. Step 1, buy a gun. But if you're not into violence, Forbes in 2021 explains you can start by not reacting to the joke and instead ask them why they think that's funny. Make them feel like the screen of a toddler's iPad. Sticky. Dirty. Shattered. By following these steps, comedy can become a more inclusive and an obviously funnier environment. After analyzing the history and science behind the stereotype that women are funny, its effects and solutions, it's become clear that we can all do our part to debunk this myth. Let's start now. Knock, knock.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And as we've already agreed, there's my finder's fee for anything that you make on this one tonight as well. Hey, thank you so much for coming on in. Hello. So we're going to stick with public address for our next event, which is informative speaking, which means Garrett hopefully is going to learn you all something. Take it away, Garrett Reynolds, whenever you're ready.
Step foot into any yellow deli and find yourself surrounded by all organic food, old folk music, the set of The Hobbit. But look no further than the front entrance to discover free pamphlets claiming a brand new culture, the radical life. Inside each pamphlet tells the story of the Yellow Deli owners, the 12 Tribes community. They employ their members to serve fresh food and recruit others through their restaurant with claims of love, acceptance, and a peaceful communal lifestyle. But these seemingly harmless, even aspirational ideals expose realities the Southern Poverty Law Center finds deeply disturbing. As the Gazette of July 2021 explains, the 12 Tribes' controversial teachings from pro-slavery to anti-gay and physical abuse fly below the radar. As their website proudly claims, they stretch all across the globe, owning yellow delis from California to Japan. With the Gazette furthering, these businesses support over 3,000 members and counting. And NPR February 2021 warns, they fuel hate and extremism in the U.S. And the Denver Gazette of January 10, 2022 adds, they also are being investigated for fueling the devastating Colorado fires. We must examine the influence and danger of the 12 Tribes community and their business of the Yellow Deli, because they can no longer be hidden by a sandwich shop. So let's look at who they are, their business, and implications of a hate group being funded by us. When I visited the Yellow Deli closest to my hometown, the employee present was open to an interview and answering any questions I had. And her goal? Promoting a message of acceptance. But to get a better understanding of who they really are, we will look at their history and beliefs. First, their history. The Yellow Deli explains on their website exactly why the 12 Tribes community formed. To offer people a free, spirited lifestyle. In 1973, Gene and Marcia Spriggs formed the community in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They state that their goal is to make the best of the peace, love, and happiness movement. Their style of religion largely centers around folk dances and communal-based worship, rather than a typical Christian Sunday morning service. Apart from their religion, their website furthers that they wanted to expand. So they created the Yellow Deli. From offering fresh fruit and a peaceful sandwich shop, the late Gene Spriggs explains, our restaurant is to reach all the young people and the fugitives who are passing by. Next, their beliefs. Although the community preaches to customers that they love everyone, their teachings and ex-members claim otherwise. When asking the employee what it would take for me to join, she states,
and you have to feel the calling in your heart to leave everything behind. Because we actually leave our family and everything to follow him.
She went on to say, and people think we're crazy for giving up all our money and leaving our family. The day of June 2021 explains, it doesn't take much digging to find their true teachings. racism, homophobia, and abuse. They're proud to be pro-segregation, claiming that multiculturalism is just not reasonable, and that gay people are dogs, because they have degraded themselves to the lowest of all creatures. The Southern Poverty Law Center furthers, early members are drawn in with rudimentary teachings like acceptance. Then they slowly become more extreme, as they're indoctrinated with teachings such as gay conversion. While many cults gatekeep their true teachings, the 12 Tribes has theirs, right beyond the menu. Visiting the Yellow Deli showed me just how easy it can be to get sucked in without knowing anything about the 12 Tribes. The atmosphere of the store was weirdly inviting. So let's look at how they sustain themselves and how they recruit. First, the community is considered to be a religious organization, but their income comes through us. USA Today of August 2020 explains, each Yellow Deli that they open puts money directly back into the community. And by claiming religious exemption, they pay 0 property taxes on any of their businesses. The member I spoke with claims that no one is considered to be an owner. They all are. She states,
all owners and we're all workers and we're all together like brothers and sisters, like a family business, but we're not.
While they may be treated as equals at work, the hours are tiring. Staff are required to keep stores open 24 hours a day and 5 days a week, and are trained to be overly friendly. As one reviewer says, it's the Southern charm you would expect, keeping customers from recognizing any unexpected danger. Next, throughout each store, the community employs simple tactics to recruit you. At the front of the store, free pamphlets are placed all along shelves explaining their beliefs and who they are. On the front of the menu and at the bottom of the receipt, they ask a simple question. We serve the fruit of the Spirit. Why not ask? The Daily Beast of May 2021 notes, by asking questions like these, the community poses themselves as welcoming, imploring any curious customer to ask about their enticing teachings of love and happiness. The Colorado University Student News furthers, the placement of their stores is strategic. They conducted their own investigation into the communities and determined that the delis are purposefully placed near college towns. In their brand new culture pamphlet, the community proposes that younger people are seduced by higher education, exposing their main target, you. When walking out the doors of the Yellow Deli, I couldn't believe what I experienced. The delis put up a front of acceptance for the communities, and most people believe it. Their beliefs and tactics prompt 2 implications. First, their communal lifestyle is an avenue for conservative extremism. The 12 Tribes explains in their brand new culture pamphlet that no one is considered to be poor because they guarantee a basic living income. And they're not alone in accepting this lifestyle. Curbed of June 2021 reports, communal lifestyles are flourishing due to safety, price, and easier living. People are attracted to the 12 Tribes because this community thrives on exploiting aspects of livelihood such as a universal income. But this community's corruption of this recently popular way of living makes them not a quirky organization to be written off, but a playbook for far-right groups to thrive in a new arena. Next, the 12 Tribes could be operating as a gay conversion group, and the legal system can't technically stop them. The Movement Advancement Project of 2021 explains, over 20 states have banned conversion therapy, with more in the process. But homophobes are getting much more creative. The 12 Tribes purposefully places its delis in college towns, causing queer college students to be susceptible to the target. The Medium of October 2020 notes, they capitalize on our lack of supportive family structure and vulnerability to violence by positioning themselves as a place of community and support. But the reality is as cruel as any unaccepting family can be. The aforementioned Southern Poverty Law Center warns, ex-members claim that senior indoctrinated members are proud of queer members that they have converted and refer to them as formerly gay. So yes, we may be making strides against gay conversion, but torture in a different name. supported by deli sandwiches, shows that this battle is clearly far from over. To the average consumer, the Yellow Deli is just a quaint sandwich shop looking for some help. But after looking at who they are, what they do, and the implications, we know that behind their doors lies a community far more sinister.
So now we're going to shift gears back into limited preparation speaking, and Andrew Schmidt is going to be doing this for us. So impromptu speaking, Andrew is only going to be given 7 minutes to both construct and deliver a speech that he has no idea what he's going to talk about yet. And one of our coaches provided a quotation earlier, but we're going to see if you all might want to have a quotation to provide instead. We've got one as backup just in case, but if Andrew, you wouldn't mind getting out of here. Thank you. So I'm sorry, Rebecca.
No.
Did everybody
At least it's easy to remember.
Okay, so is there a favorite quotation that anyone has in the room that you would maybe like to share here? We'll go Caleb, the Nana. Yeah.
Mary Shelley said, if I cannot inspire fear, or if I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear.
If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear. Mary Shelley. All right, so we're going to keep these in mind here. We got Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, fantastic. What we got?
And yet it moves, Galileo.
And yet it moves, Galileo. What other quotations do we have here? Yes.
Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I can move the world, Archimedes.
Great. Math. What else we got? Yes.
I'm about to crash into the water and then take you with me, Charlie XCX.
Fantastic. Good. So we go the gamut from Mary Shelley, Galileo, Archimedes, Charlie XCX. Room indeed. Okay, so let's put it to a vote then. How many of you want to hear Frankenstein? All right, we got a few hands here. What about Archimedes? Okay, got a few here. What about Galileo? Boo on Galileo. What about Charlie XCX? Okay, I think Charlie XCX. So what is it again?
I'm about to.
Now is this Ima or I'm about to?
I'm about to crash into the water.
The water.
Semicolon.
Semicolon? Yeah. Gonna take you with me. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So let me grab. Which do you go out this way?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I got it. All right, so keep staying this way. I'm gonna guide you. Keep looking down. There you go. Sit right here. And so it is written up on this board, and I'll give you 15 seconds prep to read it, and then I'll let you know when prep begins, and then I'll give you standard time signals. Sounds good. All right, let's welcome Andrew. 15 seconds begins. Prep begins. Thirty seconds. One minute.
I know Alabama is a football school, but I honestly couldn't care less. So I'm going to talk to you about Formula One racing, which is way cooler and has far more drama even than college football. Last year, the epic titular fight between Max Verstappen driving for Red Bull and Lewis Hamilton, the previous 6-time world champion driving for Mercedes, was down to the wire. But it meant that they had some incredible fights in previous races besides the final one. This also led to some pretty incredible crashes. Now, in Monza, the fastest race of the season, where the average speed of the cars is well over 190 miles an hour, Max was running in second place. Realizing that he was unable to pass the Mercedes, he decided to take them both out. In the first chicane, he tried to pass Lewis and kind of gave way, but not really, ending up destroying both cars. Now, nobody was hurt, but this is a great example of how, if you can't win, you should just make the winner lose. Just today's quotation. I'm about to crash into the water, gonna take you with me by Charlie XCX. Great choice, by the way, guys. That leads us to today's thesis, which is literally, if you cannot win, then you should make the winner lose. And we'll see this giving us two benefits. First, the fact that stalemates like this can often lead to victory down the road. But second, that this might be the only way to achieve victory against impossible odds, or indeed achieve success. But the first way that we are going to understand that if you can't win, you got to make the winner lose, is because stalemates can give you a second chance to reset and eventually succeed down the road. We'll examine two examples here. First, Napoleon's disastrous invasion of Russia, and second, how the Haitians defeated the French and achieved in creating their own independent republic. So the first way we will see that stalemates can lead to later success is with these two examples, beginning with Napoleon's disastrous invasion of Russia. Now, the Grand Armée numbered over 600,000 men at the beginning of this invasion, which was far more than enough to crush the Russians. They realized that they couldn't defeat Napoleon in an open battle, and so they didn't fight him. They let him march into Russia and the winter do its work. What this meant is that though nobody was able to achieve a decisive victory on the battlefield, Napoleon's army continued to get whittled down. So by the time that he finally reached Moscow, he realized that he would be unable to occupy the country. After retreating all the way back from the land he had conquered, he was eventually defeated by the Allies because he left Russia with less than 20,000 men. The Russians realized that since they couldn't defeat Napoleon in an open battle, they had to settle for a stalemate, which later led to their victory. A similar example can be seen with how Haiti achieved its independence. France was an extremely powerful nation at that time, and this was not the same situation as the American Revolution, because the Haitians were literally a third of an island that they had under their control, not an entire country that they could fall back into. So they did a similar tactic. Instead of fighting the French outright, they let tropical disease do its work. Both of these examples should tell us that if we are unable to achieve outright victory, we should settle for a stalemate, because we can come back later, once the French were put down by disease in Haiti, or indeed their army was destroyed in Russia, and achieve an outright victory. But the second way we can see that we should make the winner lose if we are unable to win is because when fighting against impossible odds, this might be our only option to make that person in power feel the pain, even if we must as well. Specifically, we'll look at two examples, the Montgomery bus boycott and how Gandhi achieved independence for India from the British. The first example of why we should accept the pain that we feel in order to provide damage to those who are oppressing us or indeed achieve success in this way is the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, walking to work sucks. I have to walk all the way from Northeast Commuter to my classes in Lloyd every single day, but I do it because I didn't sign up for my parking pass for that. The Freedom Riders did not ride. The reason why the people participating in the Montgomery bus boycott did that was specifically because this is a way that they could speak truth to power. This is a way that they could show their displeasure with segregation in the Alabama bus system, even though they couldn't do anything about it in the traditional court system, which was dominated by white people. They could make these bus companies feel the economic cost. Even though they themselves took on a huge cost, they also punished them for doing so. A similar example can be seen in India. There was no real shot at the Indians rising up against the British militarily, but Gandhi's policies of nonviolent resistance, while hurting the Indians because they were unable to achieve, because a lot of this boycott was economic and they were unable to trade with Britain, the greatest manufacturing power in the world, were still able to eventually prove to the British that it was simply far too expensive to continue to colonize India, and so, through nonviolent resistance, they were able to recede. Both of these examples tell us that even when there is no way of directly challenging this power, we can still achieve victory by making the winner feel the pain and lose. So when we return to today's quotation, I'm going to crash into the water, going to take you with me by Charlie XCX, we can see that we should probably take a page from Max Verstappen's book, that even though winning in this way might be unconventional, taking out both yourself and the winner, sometimes it's what we got to do. And so while I do not recommend getting into a multiple G crash in a Formula One race car, we can all learn something from this Charlie XCX songline.
Well, if that's not sports personship, I don't know what is. Burn it all down indeed. Okay, we have Casey. There. So we're going to shift back to interpretation of literature with dramatic interpretation. Please welcome up here, Casey, please.
Before I begin, I would like to issue a brief content warning for sexual assault. So if anybody needs to, please feel free to leave the room, exit the call, do whatever you need to do to feel safe and comfortable. Oh yeah, Coach Hyder abandoned this place years ago. Oh, well, at least the ceiling's still the same. Oh, I used to get lost for hours staring up at the patterns, all whirls and speckly, sparkly things. Brian, it's been what, 10 years? I mean, yeah, it was the summer we were 8 years old that my mom signed me up for Little League. Coach looked like those firemen I'd seen on the Playgirls my mom kept stashed under her bed. Desire sledgehammered me. Back then, I didn't know what to do with my feelings. But I didn't care about any of that. You know, all that mattered was that I made Coach proud. Is this starting to sound familiar? We need to further our understanding of grooming. Rolling Stone on September 3rd, 2021 elaborates. Not only is grooming extremely prominent towards the LGBTQ+ community and its youth, but it is significantly more tactical, subtle, and systemic than we think. Groomers will often use their victims to recruit other victims, leaving the recruiter victim to grapple with the trauma of forced participation. This allows for the groomer to more easily find new victims, while simultaneously ensuring the guilt of the first victim keeps them trapped in secrecy. Ultimately, we must recognize this facet of sexual violence, because if not, we blame victims for a crime that was never their fault. Mysterious Skin by Greg Araki. Man, he used to keep these things stocked. You know, it took till I actually laid eyes on you to be able to remember you, but with seeing you here in this room, I feel like he's watching us right now. Oh, no, I have no idea what happened to him, though. No, after that summer, he just disappeared. I mean, I don't even know if he's alive or what. Maybe it's his ghost that's watching us. Oh my God. Jesus. Here, check out that Jackson. Oh, you don't think Jackson's hot, okay? You know, different folks, different strokes. Hate it when they look like Tarzan, sound like Jay. I remember this game. And at the end of 3 innings, the score is First Hutchinson National Bank 3, Wichita Coleman Industries 0. Sorry, we shouldn't be in here. No, Coach didn't want you in the bedroom because that was just for us. Come on. This is where the big TV was. Yeah, with all those cool video games. Oh, that's the kitchen. Our first time happened there? I don't know. Well, it lasted that whole summer, you know, just me and him. But for us, it all happened here, in this room. You know, I never told anyone, not even my mom. And some people might think it's fucked up or whatever, but what happened that summer is a huge part of me. No one's ever made me feel that way, before or since. Like I was special, you know? Brian, I know we were 8 years old, but he really loved me. I mean, yeah, there were other kids sometimes. I was his prize. I was his one true love. You called me your fucking angel. Right. Okay. I'll tell you everything. It happened. Okay, that was what I told myself. It just happened. And when I looked down at the mess on the floor, it was like a kaleidoscope and shot. And when I swallowed, the taste of Coach's tongue seared my mouth. And you know, whenever there was another boy involved, it was always the same. Coach, he used me as a prop to pull you in. It was up to me to make it seem like some fun game we're supposed to be playing. And I just remember thinking, oh, he's gonna swallow his head whole. And then later when we were getting dressed, your face just looked like you'd been erased, like you were just empty inside. And then you fell, face first onto the floor. And when we picked you up, your nose was bleeding. And then we drove you back to Little River and we left you in your driveway. The end. You know, I want to tell you that it's over now and that everything's gonna be okay, but it would be a lie. You know, I wish there were some way we could go back and undo the past, but there was nothing we could do. So for years, I stayed silent, trying to telepathically communicate how sorry I was about everything that happened. And I thought of all the grief and sadness and fucked up suffering in the world. And it just made me want to escape. I wished with all my heart that we could just leave this world behind. Rise like two angels in the night and magically disappear.
Thank you so very much for sharing that, Casey. And I'd like to say that our next speech is going to bring the laughs again. But although all of our events engage in advocacy in some way or form, one event in particular seeks to provide solutions to real world problems as well. So I don't know how many laughs we're going to get, but it's sure going to be great. Next up, we're going to have Anna Coop by With Their Persuasion.
To set up. This is pretty cool. Can everybody see this well? And before I begin, I would also like to. There we go. Before I begin, I would also like to issue a content warning. My speech talks about death and violence in the disabled community. So if at any time you need to step out or leave the call, please feel free to do so. As a kid, Rico Torres's parents struggled to help their son with his behavioral episodes. Rico has autism, and his parents wanted to find a place where he would be safe while receiving an education. CNBC on April 16th, 2021 explains, they enrolled him at the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center in Canton, Massachusetts, which houses children and adults with autism, Tourette's, and ADHD. But the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network in April of 2021 notes, the care and education Rico received came in the form of electric shocks. Rico and all other residents wear a graduated electronic decelerator, GED, 24 hours a day, which administers high-intensity shocks at the push of a button. For decades, the center has been shocking those as old as 55 and as young as 8 for anything ranging from minor disobedience to behavioral episodes. The Hill on July 5th furthers, the FDA banned this device in July. That the aforementioned Autistic Self-Advocacy Network notes, a DC Circuit Court overruled that ban, making the center's abuses completely legal. Ability Magazine reminds, this ruling sets a nationwide precedent. If we don't stop the center's actions, GEDs could become commonplace in our elementary schools, childcare, and therapy sessions. The center must be held accountable, and GED devices must be banned. Let's look at what they're doing, its effects and solutions. To ban what the United Nations has explicitly called torture. Andre McCollins was restrained for 7 hours and shocked 31 times for refusing to take off his jacket. The causes behind why the center still exists are twofold. Let's look at their operation and treatment. First, the center uses public funding to safeguard its practices. The Boston Review in 2021 explains the average price of tuition for a student at the center is $277,000. But this isn't paid by the parents of students. It's paid by the school districts where students are from. The review explains New York paid $30 million to the center for its 120 residents. But the center doesn't just pocket these funds. They use them to fight legislation. Not only this, but the center uses its money to pay companies like Rudy Giuliani's law firm $100,000 for his role in defeating a Senate bill, one of many actions stopping government administrators and forcing us to turn a blind eye. The center is able to safeguard its practices by paying and sponsoring any effects to take them down. Next, the GED itself is a small yet powerful tool. The aforementioned self-advocacy network notes it's about the size of a garage door opener and can be strapped to a person's arms, legs, and even chest. Staff members carry around a keyring of student photographs, each one a remote control used to shock students from a distance. And the worst part is, as the Washington Post explains, there are some parents who prefer the treatment. The Washington Post interviewed parents who explained they found the GED life-changing. In reality, they had simply never found a treatment center adequate for their son. The GED simply shocked him into total submission. Staff members equate the shock feeling to a bee sting. The residents that receive it call it the longest 2 seconds of their lives. Matthew Shields looks forward to his monthly parent visits. That single hour spent with them is relatively shock-free, allowing him to relax. The effects of the GED are seen on both a societal and individual level. First, the center is changing how institutions can legally treat their students. 19th Magazine in October 2021 explains, the original case banning the GED was very similar to other cases banning types of corrective practices, like hitting students. But now that there's tangible legal precedent allowing for shock therapy, a legal loophole has been created that mental health clinics, institutions, and schools can and will exploit. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut puts it best. These devices are unique, but at their essence, they are no different from other types of corporal punishment. The center has changed how institutions can legally punish or treat their students. Next, the student receiving these shocks experience physical and emotional pain. The aforementioned Washington Post interviewed some of these students at the center, as well as those who managed to leave, all sharing hauntingly similar effects of the treatment. One student wrote, "I now struggle with PTSD and a fear of authority. Neurodiverse adults and children are already predisposed to emotional distress. The GED now ensures it." Not only this, but as the Washington Post explains, the GED specifically criminalizes autistic behavior, with many residents reported being shocked for things like stimming, refusing to remove clothing, and speaking out of turn. Rico recalls, he was shocked for refusing to use the bathroom when told to do so. As a result, he wet the bed. Then he was shocked again. Besides the physical pain of shocks, residents are left with psychological trauma that our neurodiversity warrants punishment. The center has been responsible for the deaths of 6 people that we know of. Their continual abuse and manipulation of people like me cannot continue. Luckily, we have a multitude of solutions from a legislative, organizational, and awareness lens. First, Congress must pass the CASA Act. CASA, or Keep All Students Safe Act, would ban the use of restraints in all 50 states and introduce a watchdog into medical centers. This would ban the restraints used during the treatment and make sure somebody is at the center at all times. And because it isn't specifically targeted at them, they won't have enough time to pay to see its defeat. You can come up to me after this showcase and I'll provide you links to a copy of the bill and how to get it to your representative. This has to be at the front of Congress's docket. Next, we need to petition disability organizations to fight for us. These organizations hold significant monetary and policy power, and it's time we ask them to use that power to speak out against the center. Robin Rosigno is the founder of an autism advocacy organization, and she's created a script you can use when talking to these groups. I have that script with me as well as a list of organizations that you can contact. Please reach out to these and any others you know of. Finally, we need to increase awareness about the center. The hashtag #StopTheShock movement has gained momentum in recent months and helps to expose what exactly the center is doing. I've created a social media toolkit that I'll share with you that includes how to use the hashtag and where to find it. You can also follow my Twitter @ASDDiscourse, where I post tweets and upload content from the disability community and conversations surrounding the center. The social media toolkit will also tell you how to leave a negative Google review of the center. There's already like a dozen calling them out for torture. If we can reach even one parent with these reviews, we could save a child's life. I know that this issue seems like it affects one school in Massachusetts. But one school, one disabled child being electrocuted is too many. Rico describes his time at the center as an isolating experience. He now struggles to function in ordinary society. We looked at what the center's doing, its effects and solutions. The Judge Rotenberg Center has sent a very clear message to neurodiverse people. And it's about time that we send one right back.
Thank you so very much, Anna. And while Anna, feel free to go ahead and put your stuff together. Everyone else can take a second to stand up, stretch. It's been a long time for us all here, but we're coming up toward the end. And yeah, stretch, do whatever you need there. Give Anna a second to get your junk out of the document. And for you all at home, thank you all for being here. We'll continue in just a few moments.
No, but it would be like yeah. I've never been in one of
Okay, if you all wouldn't mind making your way back, we'll keep this show going here. So far we've been discussing multiple genres of speech, such as limited preparation, oral interpretation of literature, public address. However, one event also engages in multiple genres of oral interpretation of literature. Neff Watts is going to share their program oral interpretation event, in which you will see multiple genres of prose, poetry, drama, articles. What else do you got going in there?
I've got some blog posts. I've got an interview. No.
Somehow it's all going to make sense and look real pretty. So next up, we'll have Neff Watts.
I was 21 when I came out to my mother. For the third time. I love you no matter what, she said. I just worry that your life will be so much harder than other people's. When I think about what gay people go through, it just isn't what I would choose for you. But I know you don't have a choice. It felt a little bit like she said, well, I know you'd be straight if you could. Women are taught from a very early age that making men happy is their job. We're supposed to want a man's love more than anything else. So what happens if you want to be with women? When you're trained from childhood to want romantic and sexual relationships with men, and only men, how do you separate that from what you want? The first time you dance together, don't wait for her to invite you, just go to her. Say yes when she asks you to teach her how to dance. Tell her you're more than just a dancing coach. You're also an expert at eating pizza and would love to get some with her sometime. Try and act nonchalant when she excitedly says yes and writes her number on your hand. If our equality is predicated on the assumption that it's less good to be queer than it is to be straight, doesn't that undermine the potential for creating our own authentic, fully realized queer lives? Will we always exist in the shadow of the heterosexuality that could have been? Being queer goes far beyond biology. According to queer studies professor Andrew Joseph Pagoda, culture shapes and creates what's possible. But for many LGBTQ people, we choose to create our own possibilities as an act of defiance and of love, both for ourselves and others. However, many people reject this notion of choice, which frequently leads to resignation rather than acceptance. with the underlying assumption being that if it were a choice, it would be the wrong one. In truth, queerness is less a product of our birth and more of an emotional experience. And just like emotions, both gender and sexuality can change throughout one's lifetime. Yes, even by choice. So with the prose, How to Love Her by Annika Bloom, the article, The Problem with Born This Way by Anonymous, an interview with Cynthia Nixon from the New York Times, a blog in response to that interview by John Aravosis, and Am I a Lesbian by Anjali Luce, and the poems Dear Straight People by Denise Froman and The Lesbian Reevaluates by Blythe Baird. A program. Because our experiences should have never been put up for debate in the first place. I gave a speech recently, and it included the line, I've been straight and I've been gay, and gay is better. They tried to get me to change it because they said it implies that homosexuality can be a choice. And to me, it is a choice. You don't get to define my gayness for me. Please don't say that gay people can choose their sexual orientation, because they can't. And when you tell the New York Times they can, you do tremendous damage to our civil rights effort. Every religious right hate monger is now going to quote this woman every time they want to deny us our civil rights. Thanks. And if it turns out that I'm not 100% gay, who do I ask to forgive me? What if I accidentally gave my heart the wrong name? I'm trying to remind myself that redefining my identity does not make me a liar, but if it does, who do I address my apology to? Do I have to go back in the closet if I already came out of it once? Dear straight people, you're the reason we stay in the closet. You're the reason we even have a closet. Now, I don't like closets, but you made the living room into an unshared space. And I'm feeling like a guest in my own house the time you asked to meet her family. Don't show that you're hurt when all she says is no. A reminder that you just took her to your family reunion. A reminder of how exciting it was when your mother caught the two of you the next morning asleep under a tarp. Pretend you don't notice that she still doesn't offer to take you to meet her family. Lesbian isn't a dirty word, and being a lesbian is beautiful. Now, if you liked men in the past, but no longer are attracted to men or even want to pursue relationships with them, you can be a lesbian now. It's a now identity. The boys at school used to cackle at me, assuring me they didn't mind my sexuality as long as they could watch. How my love only counts when you can whistle at it, when you can click on it, when it's entertaining for you to see it, I say. It doesn't matter if we flew here or we swam here. It matters that we are here. Why can't it be a choice? Now, why is that any less legitimate? It seems to me we're just ceding this point to bigots who are demanding it. And I don't think that they should define the terms of the debate. The time you talk to her brother. Look at him through the glass. He watches you with a smirk on his face. He says he was expecting someone to show up. He wasn't expecting someone with breasts. Ask him how she could love a man when she grew up with the constant fear that she would wake up and find one on top of her. Tell him you wish he wasn't behind bars so you could kill him yourself. He sneers and says, she was gay long before I tried to help her. Recently, my mother told me that if she knew I was going to be gay, she never would have had me in the first place. This is why I am terrified to be wrong, to see the smirk on all of their faces if I ever dare to wake up one day like a white flag in a boy's arms, just as everyone suspected I would. Dear straight people, why do I have to prove my love is authentic? Why do I have to prove my love is authentic? Why do I have to prove my love is authentic? Why do you have to stare at me when I'm holding hands with my girlfriend like I'm about to rob you, dear straight people? You make me want to fucking rob you. The truth for most of us is that we're not just queer because it's that or tie inside. We're queer because our queerness is an inextricable part of our lives. To change that would be to change who we are. And we like who we are. The first time you see her, she's dancing, but not well. Go up to her, go ask her to dance with you. Ignore your own directions and watch her move off beat. Watch her until she stops dancing and walks out. Watch her in your dreams that night. Tell yourself that if you ever get the chance, you'll stop watching. Take her by the hand and dance.
Thank you so much, Nev. We're now going to shift back into public address with communication analysis. So, Sandu Aladawaka is going to be sharing his communication analysis, in which he takes an artifact that exists in the world and then uses an academic lens through which we're going to analyze it. Sound boring? Guess what? It's not. So, take it away, Sandu, whenever you're ready.
When it comes to spending free time, a few rounds of Wii Sports Resort or Mario Party 3 are at the top of the list. Few tech industries have become more entrancing than video games in the past few years. And for China, 2020 and 2021 proved to be an economic gamer's paradise. According to the South China Morning Post on November 19, 2021, the video game industry in China, through a combination of mobile gambling, esports, and products, made a whopping $43 billion. And China was not happy with that. On September 1st, 2021, the Chinese government released a nationwide mandate which regulated video games, including a law that kids under the age of 18 could only play for 3 hours per weekend because of concerns of developing addictions. Now, a municipal ban on how much Luigi's Mansion a kid can fit per weekend might seem like a little much, especially for us here in the States. However, analyzing China's inner anxieties about addiction in the West may reveal that this response is more calculated than it appears, forcing us to ask today's research question. How does China's video gameplay mandate protect its citizens from capitalist addiction? To answer, let's turn to Dr. Sasha Breger Bush's 2010 research, Opioid onto Politics, Industrial Capitalism, Metabolic Rift, and the Power of Things. This model is ideal, as Bush analyzes how our relationship to things, or non-human items, is the core crux of capitalist cycles. So today, let's go over Bush's model, apply it to China's mandate, and draw implications. Because as Slate Magazine on September 21st, 2021 explains, this is far more than about kids' habits. It's about China protecting its economic identity.
Bush frames mass addiction under the process of metabolic rift, a Marxist critique that our relationship to things traps us in a feedback loop. She posits 3 steps to this process: separation, tearing, and rupture. First, metabolic rift begins when an item separates us from society. Bush stipulates that when we find a thing that attracts our attention, we just want to spend time with it and isolate from our family and friends. We are externally cut off from our state as social creatures and form a one-sided, non-human relationship with an object. Second, once we are isolated, the thing tears our internal priorities apart. With no one to stop us, we lose ourselves in the addiction. Bush argues that the thing wreaks physiological and psychological havoc on our minds. The rush of excitement we get from interacting with our item, the hit, makes us crave it more and replace our priorities with a dependency. Third, once enough of us have fallen victim to tearing, a cultural rupture is at stake. The once held social norms are set aside for the thing's monopoly over our lives. Eventually, we prioritize forming communities around the thing, not the people. The end result is an uprooted society where the lines between person and product are erased. Now that we've examined Bush's model, let's apply it by examining how China attempts to prevent metabolic rift. First, China's government was afraid of the amount of people spending time with video games instead of outside with society. The aforementioned Slate article continues that as video games separated children from schools and social groups, the government feared a more isolated generation. So, by enforcing the 3-hour per weekend rule, China effectively removes the separator from the equation. Second, China is familiar with how addictive things can tear our priorities apart. Being locked inside with video games for hours on end develops a dependency on the serotonin and dopamine it provides. A lot like the effects of opioids. And China has a history with opioids. The aforementioned South China Morning Post indicates that the Chinese state media marked video games as spiritual opiates, advertising these games as a psychological threat to their children. But this rhetoric not only proves it as a threat to their children, but the entirety of China's population. And third, by preventing the separation and tearing of their youth, China wants to place a safeguard on communal rupture and prevent repeating history. China understands that if tech addiction takes a hold of their youth, an entire economy that needs them is in danger. A similar crisis with workers happened in the 1850s, when the majority of China's workforce fell victim to the fog of opioids, a drug perfect for capitalist cycles. CNBC on August 2nd, 2021 explains that China's schools and workforce hinge on efficiency and communal benefit. So the government wants to protect this mindset from being corrupted by another Western import. Now that we've applied Bush's model to China's mandates, let's return to our research question. How does China's video gameplay mandate protect its citizens from capitalist addiction? China interrupts the physiological and sociological dependency on consumer culture. This interruption of consumer culture posits 2 implications: the underlying reasons in China's actions and how it reflects on us. But first, China's government is barricading a conversion into a Western economy. This prevention of video game addiction can be seen as a holistic, if not silly, concern for their children's health. But as Slate expands, China sees the booming video game industry as a symptom of capitalist tech privatization. This isn't the first time China has prevented Western technology trends either. In the 2010s, when American-like internet cafes and arcades became social hotspots for China, the government was quick to shut them down as well. Furthermore, when the British first introduced opioids to China in the 19th century, they were viewed as medical products, only for the Western economy to benefit off of an entirely addicted country. China is putting a cork in these floodgates before they suffer another Western-induced metabolic rift. And finally, if China's extreme actions are a reflection on our economic model, what does that say about us? The United States isn't acknowledged as the peak of capitalism for nothing. Our entire system is built on people's addiction to the next best product. The Western economy therefore perpetuates metabolic rift. It's how things as recreational as video games, according to TechJury in November of 2021, made a whopping $90 billion in the US tech sector in just a year. So are we doomed to follow this cycle of addiction forever? China is taking extreme actions to avoid the most minute threats of addiction. This doesn't justify their actions in micromanaging people's personal rights, but it does question our outright dismissal of their anxieties. Though the US criticizes the Chinese government's actions, nuances like this question whether we're in the right just because they're in the wrong. What's most ironic about China is despite all their efforts to curb the video game industry, they're now being referred to as the video game capital of the world. After looking at Bush's model, applying it to China and drawing implications, we uncovered that China's bizarre actions are rooted in very grounded fears. China's government is avoiding metabolic rift at every corner because they know that if they fail to do so, then it's game over.
See, I feel smarter after that too. We're finally going to have a bit more of a variation for our final event of the evening. So let's keep the energy going as we welcome up duo interpretation. Yes, that's the same energy. That's fantastic. In this, we're going to have two people perform an interpretation event. So please welcome up our dynamic duo. They're not Umbrella Bros, but they're pretty close. It's Jaquacy Mentor and Alex Brubaker.
Let's compare scars. Mine are in my mind, yours are in the theater. I say a pleasant hey, and I check with the music director to make sure he has my tempo. La, 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 and I sing Colored Spade, which is basically a list of every imaginable slur for Black people. Content with the line between pain and anger, the director says to me, "Great job." Do it again. Oh. This time, imagine if you were a Black man and someone's actually saying those things to you. Yep. Still Black as hell. And I sang the damn song. Whew. Anyway. Whew. Wake me up before you go. Whew. I just had the weirdest, craziest dream. Like deja vu or something. Got a broken taillight back there. Fuck. Got some ID? Yes, sir. What are you reaching for? My ID? What are you reaching for? The thing you asked me for! In my life, I had a lot of unfortunate experiences. So when it came time for me to write about the shit I'd faced, I knew I could sell a story on my college applications. Each draft I wrote. Ooh. Wake me up before you go going. I just had the weirdest, craziest dream. Like deja vu or something. When self-disclosure proves a barrier to success, the economization of our trauma paves the way for self-exploitation.
When critiquing the novel, what we don't talk about when we talk about that, journalist Kara Scheffler explains that We are often forced to vivisect our own identities.
in order for others to buy into our arguments.
Although Scheffler was specifically addressing fat phobia, many of her claims strike much closer to home for most of us.
From pressure to writing about the struggles we face in admissions and scholarship essays, to unhelpfully mining our trauma in competitive speech and debate, the exploitation of this trauma is not only celebrated, it is expected.
And when white competitors start to view the black struggle as too heavy or even overdone,
Creating the notion that the white struggle isn't competitive enough or heavy enough,
we begin to get trapped in a cycle comparing and revisiting our trauma and fearful of how ours ranks against others.
So, using the proses, have you ever felt the pressure to sell your pain by Callie Holterman? I'm a black actor. Here's what it's like to not be famous by Bear Billinger. The poems, Let's Compare Scars by Misha Kroon. Poetry on Essays by Ella Bon Gregory. The dramas, Groundhog Day for a Black Man by Cynthia Cao. And Two Distant Strangers by Travon Free.
A program resetting the cycle of self-exploitation
To instead strive for self-empowerment. So I'm playing a police officer and I walk around on set fiddling around with my fake gun. Pew, pew, pew. Pew, pew, pew. And I'm told to follow this gentleman who's introduced as the pew, pew, pew.
police consultant.
Pew.
You know how to use that thing?
Not well.
Try what?
Draw it like a man.
Did he just hit me?
Look, you're not gonna pull any of that pussy shit when you're with me. I don't care what happens out there, but for the 5 minutes you're with me, you're representing each and every one of us. So push through and stand strong.
Let's compare feelings. Mine are slowly choking me. Yours are. Every time I wrote, discarded and redrafted, it kept feeling as if I were trying to gain pity. What I had gone through, it was tough, but was this really all I had to offer? Let's compare thoughts. Mine weave in and out, yours are conflicted. I asked what others had written. My old teacher, remember, he felt pressure
To write about something that I could oversell.
He knew enough about the hardships he faced, but even then,
I didn't have enough. I never went without.
this made him feel as if he were competing against kids who faced even more adversity than him. So the question then became,
Are my challenges enough? And does that give me value?
let's compare hope. Mine is that I can make it to tomorrow. Yours is, wake me up before you go. I'm alive?
Got a cracked windshield. Got some ID?
Yes, sir. I'm going to reach down very
Don't be
slowly.
stupid.
Don't be stupid!
Wake me up before you go.
Fuck!
I'm stopping everybody with broad noses. You stopped too long back there. Let's see if you match your description.
As I kept rewriting my personal statement, it kept sounding cliched.
Got a book and taillight back there. Is there a firearm in the car today, sir?
This is an open carry state, sir. There is a firearm in the glove box.
Let me see it.
Fuck!
Get on the ground.
For what?
Calm down.
Hey, get off of me!
Calm down.
I said get off of me!
Please.
I said get off of me!
Oh my God! That was phenomenal. I've never seen it done quite like that. Woo! Let's get it one more time for lighting and so forth. But oh my God! Absolutely phenomenal.
I couldn't teach this white director that having a police officer assault me to teach me how to play a role was wrong. I couldn't explain my disdain for fear of losing income This was supposed to be a new beginning for me.
Wake me up before you go.
No.
Sir, you have a broken taillight back there.
Officer Merck.
What?
Listen, I don't know what kind of racist deja vu shit we got going on here, but somehow we're calling this loop where you keep fucking killing me, man.
Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna
No, listen. I'm about to fuck your head up. See that cute couple over there? They about to kiss. Bang. Yoga girl, right over there. She about to take a selfie. Voila. Watch Skater Kid eat shit in 3, 2.
Son of a bitch. So, if I shoot you now, we're gonna do it again. How many times does this happen?
I don't know, 99? That's your mom's calling. She called you every time it take you longer than 5 minutes to shoot me. That's fine.
So what do you want?
I just want to go home. Let's compare scars.
Who's worse?
I was voiceless, and I'm getting stronger now. But I could use your help.
This is something we could achieve. This is something that is possible.
This is something that could be advantageous for everybody in this room, not just minorities.
More variety,
more truth,
more support.
And in the end, isn't that what we want from all of these actors in here?
Support
and truth.
Thank you all so very much for being here this evening. And thank all of you out there as well in digital live stream land. But let's give it up one more time for all of our performers this evening. If you came tonight to watch, or if you streamed in tonight, please come back tomorrow night as well. We're going to have a brand new batch of performers, some more messages, and a lot more fun. So thank you all so much. From me to you, have a good night, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Oh.